Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, founder of GSD, Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe at GST that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. Today, I have an incredible guest, Michael Gale, the CEO of the Entrepreneurs Club, which accelerates ventures by leveraging capital and driving cross-border partnerships to fuel global growth and entrepreneurial success. He's a tech entrepreneur turned investment banker and wealth manager. After spending much of his time in Silicon Valley with stints in Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, he's now based in Abu Dhabi while spending significant time in Riyadh. As well as managing a major multifamily office platform, he's still working in the founder growth ecosystem. He's built an amazing team, the Entrepreneurs Group, which is the first capital platform to provide financial services to entrepreneurs across their entire growth journey. He believes that the average entrepreneur spends half their time consuming financial services and half that is switching between types of providers. He's compressing that of inefficiency and leveraging the incredible opportunity provided by capital and by being based in Abu Dhabi, the newest financial capital where the entire world can connect to do business. He's been an integral part of the globalization in many leading companies, including Macromedia, Acme, and Apple. He's been involved in over 100 startups focused on how to accelerate their growth by leveraging international markets and partnerships. With that, I'd like to bring Michael Gale on board. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Gary.
So tell me a little bit about it. You went to, was it Prince Alfred College? Was that in Australia?
Yeah. I'm originally from South Australia, the wine district in
Oh,
Australia. That's the most important thing.
How did you go from that part of the world to going to Silicon Valley? What was that journey like?
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I was in sales early in my career, and when the PC revolution began, I started importing software from all around the world because no one was making software in Australia. I got into making software for PCs, selling PCs, and eventually my company got bought by another company, and then we were a distributor for Authorware, which later became Macromedia. And we were a very successful distributor. We were distributing throughout Asia, and we were the number one distributor. So they bought the company, and I moved to the US. And at that time, they were actually in Minneapolis, but then they did a merger, Macro and Paracomp formed Macromedia, which was in Silicon Valley. So I went there, but my role there was very much in selling, still selling internationally. So I drove a lot of the international markets and so on. And then it grew. It went public on the NASDAQ, and I kind of stayed. I learned about I didn't know anything about the venture model, and that's really how I got into it. But I was literally selling software and got bought by an American company.
So you did that, Macromedia, for those that don't know, Flash was a big thing. It was acquired by Adobe, so $3.4 billion. So going down through it, so you had that was what, Australian Interactive Media Multimedia Association, and you were involved with that, and Avante Systems. So which one of those was the one that was bought by Macromedia?
It was actually a company called Learnware. But Avante Systems was the PC reseller, big Apple dealer in PC. And one of the things it had the distribution for was the Authorware software. And we sold Avante to Fujitsu. And then they didn't want the software distribution. And so then we started this new company doing the software distribution, which was called Learnware. But we weren't that for very long before Authorware bought us, and then we became part of Macromedia. So that's what completed the journey. But it was literally just because we sold so much software, because we were very sales focused, and that was really the essence of it. Was just and that's always been my thing. In the end, it doesn't matter how clever you are or how great the software is or what you think your story is. If customers aren't buying it, it's really hard. And when you start, in Silicon Valley, when I went there, you could raise a lot of venture capital, and you can have great products, and you can sell a company without even having the revenue much. But when you're in a peripheral market, like Australia was tiny, we were selling into Asia, you've got no development, there's no venture capital. The only thing you've got is sales. So you have to you have to work out what sells, sell that, and so on. And so that is my background. My background's always been revenue driven.
So when you went down through it, so you moved around quite a bit. You were in San Francisco, you spent time there, you were in Asia Pacific, and then you moved over to Bangkok. What was that all about? What made you decide to move over to Bangkok? And I mean, were you looking at the region because of growth, or was it because of opportunities?
Well, when I was building my first business out of Australia, we were distributing into Asia. So we were in a lot of the Southeast Asian markets. We were in China early, we were in Japan, we were in Korea. And what happened, the Bangkok connection came because a group of guys there had set up a company, and they launched what was the first, when MSN was literally a portal, and then Google was just starting to do stuff, all the portal stuff. So I got involved with a company there that was I went on the board of that company, which grew very successfully, and then it did an exit. But it was very similar to what I'd done before, which was taking a very successful couple of US companies that had the technology, but didn't necessarily know how to build in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in Thailand, and we were based in Thailand. But the usual disconnect, and those big US software companies not focused on those markets at that time. So you could always, and I did quite a bit of that. And what took me around the region a lot was finding successful venture-backed companies in Silicon Valley and saying, I'll go do Asia, because people might be doing Europe, they weren't focused on Asia, they didn't want to spend the money, and go and do Asia and build it up, then sell it to the mothership. By getting revenue, getting big partnerships, that sort of thing. So that was my model for quite a long time, actually.
That model. I lived in Russia 12 years, so I spent time.
I remember that.
Yeah. So I spent time in Moscow and Ukraine, and in Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, that part of the world, and that was a lot of what people were doing then too, right? You build it up, and market entry strategies and all that, because a lot of it's about the connections in those areas, right? If you don't have the right kind of folks behind you to help, the probability of success goes down. But as you're going down through in that, and you went over to Sinotech Media in Beijing, how was that? I mean, you were there, a couple of years, but how do you adapt to the culture? How do you go down through and change? Because it's a whole lot different from San Francisco to Beijing, right? And from Beijing to Bangkok. How do you mentally reorient yourself for those cultures to do business?
Well, I think there is an advantage being Australian in that we're part of the Western world. We're part of the Anglosphere. We have, this English and American connection, but we also have this sense, we're in the Southern Hemisphere. Less than 10% of people on the whole planet live in the Southern Hemisphere, and we're right at the bottom of it. So we always feel like we're this little outpost. So everywhere we go, we're always trying to fit in. We're traveling a lot. So I think it's partly that people, I guess you're a lot more humble when you come from Australia, but you actually look like the Americans and the Europeans. But so you have that. I think, but I was very, very fortunate. I traveled a lot as a child. My mother was a very famous social geographer who was one of the first people not to study other cultures, in the way like Margaret Mead had as, separate different cultures, but to study the integration of traditional cultures with modern urbanization. And she was a visiting professor. So I actually went to Asia. We went to, all around the world as a child with my mother. And she was always, we're going to go there. We need to learn the language. You need to go and eat with the local people. Let's find out where the local people go. Where do they shop? What do they go and see? Let's not go and see the museum. Let's go and find where they buy their things. So as a child, I was very, very fortunate to have this sort of, how do you go to a new place and watch where everyone walks from the train station and go to the restaurant they go to, rather than going to the one in your hotel or the one that's the brand from home. So I had a very fortunate upbringing that sort of opened me to the, to a few real key tricks. But most of us, because humans are such good pattern recognition machines, when we go somewhere that's different, we can't help but feel like the way we do things, our system of government, our culture, the way we speak, our relation, we always feel that our way is the right way. You know what I mean? And it comes across to people. It's having that trick to say, this is different. It's not wrong or right. Neither is what we do. It's just different, right? And that thing, you're talking to someone in Belarus and you think they're being rude. That's just how they, but they're just being more direct. It's that kind of thing, and it's being able to disassociate from your own prejudices, which is very, very hard to do because most of those things are subconscious. So I had a very fortunate upbringing, and then I just had a lot of experience of going to places, and I had a lot of kind people. I found that when you go to places and you say to people, "I'm new, I don't know what I'm doing," people will help you.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a ticket. That's from my perspective. One of the things living in the UK, living in Germany, and then in Russia, Ukraine, Belarus area. If as long as you were just accept that there are going to be differences, no question about it, and some will be dramatically different culturally. But you got to understand it and try to learn about it, because if you don't, nothing good's going to happen. In your way. Because all of a sudden people come defensive when you start talking about your way, but your way may or may not be right in that culture.
No, that's exactly right. But yeah, so I'm very, very fortunate. And now I ended up wanting to always go to the new places. I'm often going, to places that are first opening up, or new places, or places I haven't been before. And I have an experience about how to go to a new place, but I get a huge amount of adrenaline and energy out of going to a place. And one of the things I explain to people is there's so much you can learn about a place. I used to go to India a lot on business, and one weekend I had a thing where I had a whole lot of meetings in Mumbai on the Friday and then on the Monday, so I had to stay for the weekend. I was by myself in a hotel. So I caught a cab to the CST, which is the central train station, because I'd learnt when I was in China, if you just walk through all the hutongs, you don't have to leave yourself a way back. You just catch a cab back, as long as you know what the return is. So what I learned to do in Mumbai was get on those local trains that you always see in the famous photos of everyone hanging out the doors.
Yeah, on the roofs and everything else.
Exactly. And you just go a certain number of stops. You go 5 stops. And I just catch the first train at the station. Doesn't matter where it's going. Go 3 stops, 5 stops, 10 stops. Because then if you walk from that train station, you always know it'll take you back to the center. And then you just walk around and you see food. And suddenly you're the only non-local person. And people literally come up and say, "Do you want to come and have a meal? What are you doing here?" And it's that... it doesn't actually take much to get out of your comfort zone and do those things, but you have to be deliberate about it. You have to make a conscious, what am I going to do today to learn something, and how am I going to get out of my comfort zone? And that's what I say. I've said this to my kids. They're so sick of hearing it. I say it to my niece. I say it to my nephew. I say it to everybody. Everything that good that happens, you are outside your comfort zone. No one ever tells you a story that says, "Gee, I woke up at my normal time, caught my normal bus to work, sat at my normal desk doing my normal job." Every good story that anyone ever tells you, they're on a plane and they talk to the person next door, or they missed their plane, or they missed their bus, or something happened, or they lost their wallet, or they were hiking somewhere, or every good story starts with being outside of your comfort zone. So how are you going to have good stories unless you get outside of your comfort zone?
Yeah, no, I agree. I had lunch with Scott McNeely, who's one of the founders of Sun Microsystems. And, I remember him telling me back in the 90s, and then again a couple of years ago, always go to areas you fear the most because you're going to learn the most. And I remember when I went over to, Eastern Europe, I felt the same way. I was scared to death because
especially when you went there. I mean,
yeah, it was 1992, February 23rd.
wow.
And I remember that. But let me tell you, the other side of it, you learn a whole lot more because you're out there absorbing stimuli. There's all kinds of things there are things around you where you can learn so much. And other people are so afraid that if you're over there, they come to you to be able to help them because they're afraid, right? So and those were the opportunities. I know, when I did that, I would fly. For me, I'd go to Moscow to Vladivostok, or over to Kaliningrad, or up north to the Arctic area, or down through Central Asia to places other people would, just didn't go. And you would just learn so much. And people, you're right, were really kind. For the most part, really kind. It's like 1 out of 100 aren't, right?
Yeah.
You got to understand. The other ones will kind of protect you. If you're, kind and do kind things for them, they protect you. So how did you get, you went down through it. You went back to Australia, right? You were working with Project Rosanna. You spent time there. Then how did you go to Abu Dhabi? What did you just wake up one day and say, "Oh, I haven't done this. I need to try something entirely different"?
No, I met someone, an Emirati, who had come from a well-connected family, but a very open, very international Emirati, and he was looking to a guy called Zayed bin Awaida, and he comes from a banking family, a very famous family here, and he was looking to invest in technology. And we met through an introduction of somebody, and they said, "Oh, why don't you go?" I was. This is actually in 2012, the first time I came, and I was living in San Francisco, and I went, and I met him, and we just clicked really well. And then he started to get me involved in projects and investment, and then with him, I set up an asset management vehicle in Switzerland, and we started to do a lot of things together. So it was really, literally just somebody saying to me, "Oh, you should go meet this guy. He's interested." And he and I ended up like going and having sushi together in Abu Dhabi because we both like sushi and we got on well and we became friends. Really, as simple as that. And for a long time, we were mostly just friends. Now we're business partners and we're doing some great things together. But it was just that kind of, I was a bit outside my comfort zone, meeting this person. I didn't know anything about the Middle East, and I'd only ever flown through here. I hadn't spent any time here. And again, he introduced me to all these other Emiratis. They're so hospitable. They're so warm. They invite you into their homes. They have all these wonderful, and they're all, they're very tribal, families at the center of everything. There's a lot of, everybody knows everyone. Everyone's married to somebody, and there's cousins, and this great, it's like this supercharged family environment. And I just loved it. And I fell in love with the place. And then, of course, it's been going through incredible change and development. And, it's increasingly becoming one of the great, Abu Dhabi has become one of the great financial centers of the world, when 20 years ago, no one would have thought that, but they've done it. And so I've been very privileged to be here at a time when it's been transforming itself. It's been quite lovely. But again, that is literally one of those, I might just as easily have, if I'd been most people, I would have said, well, why am I going to meet him? Are we sure he's going to do something? Will he do this deal? And we didn't do the deal I went for. You know what I mean? But I'm like, hey, that sounds cool. I'd love to go and meet an Emirati guy. So I will. So
wow, that's amazing. And so what culturally, how different is it over there for you? You've been around. What's different culturally from a business culture standpoint than other places?
Well, I mean, fundamentally, it is the same as everywhere in that relationships are everything. The difference here is, it's a very unusual society where the local people, the Emiratis, are in quite a small minority in their own country. Nearly everybody is actually from somewhere else. And, if you think about that, I mean, I think about that in Australia. Australia's like America. We have a lot of immigration, but still, you're not in a tiny minority in your own country. Generally, for most of the local people here, they speak Arabic at home. But if you leave your home, English is actually the language, because the people working in the shops, serving in the restaurants, driving your car, filling the gas, they come from India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Ethiopia. The management level people come from people come from everywhere. So it's really weird to be a local in a country where you're in the minority and your native language is not the most spoken language. So they're very, very good at adapting to us. So one of the things here is it's kind of almost dangerous, because it's so full of other foreigners. And the Emiratis, it's such a polite culture, and they're so welcoming, because if you think about it, it's originally a Bedouin culture, harsh desert environment, people traveling, everybody's sort of united together against the harshness of the environment. So welcome people. If a traveler arrives, no questions asked, feed them, give their camels water, look after them. It's that sort of a culture. The problem with it is that because they're so accommodating, you can come here and just be like you were back home and not even notice that may or may not offend them. They'll never say anything. They'll never say, that's not our culture, don't do this. You have to actually, and if you say to them, is it okay if I wear this? Or is it okay if I say that? Or do you mind if I do this? They'll say, no problem, no problem. But actually they might not be comfortable, but they would never tell you. So unlike most other places,
how do you figure that out, though?
It's quite hard. Well, I made a few mistakes in the beginning, but it's quite hard, because everywhere else, like you go to Russia, most people are Russian, and if you do something wrong, they'll tell you, or it will be obvious. And you follow the lead. But here, you don't. You have to really pay attention, and then you have to be lucky, like I am, and have good Emirati friends, and you expand it. And there are other non-Emirati Arabs here. There's quite a lot of people here who are Syrian, Jordanian, Egyptian. So, there's all these other Arabs here who understand the culture, and they guide you as well. But it's uniquely tricky in that they're so polite and they're in the minority. If you're not careful, I meet people who've been here for 10 years and don't really know the local culture and don't even know there is one almost. You know what I mean? Because you can miss it, particularly in Dubai. We're in Abu Dhabi, but like today I'm in Dubai, and Dubai is a very foreign city. You can spend a lot of time in Dubai and not see many locals. So you just have to adjust to it. But once you get the hang of it, it's great. I love it here. And now what's happened is it's become this like global center where, when I was a kid, world leaders, when there was some big political thing, world leaders would all meet in Geneva and negotiate things. And when people left office, so they had to go and set up somewhere new and they'd take some of their money and the world would say, okay, we won't pursue you if you go and live safely. They would all go to Geneva or Zurich and take their money. Now, Putin, Xi, all these people come to Abu Dhabi. Deals are being done in Abu Dhabi and Riyadh. The prisoner exchange between the Ukrainians and the Russians, the Russians, all this sort of stuff. There's all these meetings happening here, and people are using it as a financial capital, and it's quite incredible. So, Abu Dhabi has this slogan. They say we are the capital of capital, and they really are, because the global north-south, the world becoming less multilateral, and the thing, if you think about Abu Dhabi, is there's no capital controls. Everyone can move their money in and out, and anybody can come here. There's for a lot of people in Africa and Asia and so on who want to raise money or move their startup or live somewhere safe or invest their money or buy property or store their wealth. A lot of them can't even get a visa to places in the West. They can't go to America. They can't go to London. They can't go to Europe. But everyone's welcome here. And this is this cultural value. Everybody's welcome. And of course, their money's welcome with them, and their ideas and their talent and their passion. So by creating this welcome place, it's become, for me, this is the new Switzerland. But Switzerland was always Switzerland for the really super wealthy. This is like Switzerland for the everybody. And that's a very different thing. Sure, the super wealthy are all coming here and buying these, the stuff you see on social media about the crazy apartments here and everything else. But there's a lot of just regular people coming here and building their lives and feeling safe.
Is it expensive there, Michael? So somebody comes in, so a startup wants to come over there. How would they ever survive in a place like that, right? What's the cost? I mean, it's like San Francisco's crazy expensive,
It is pretty expensive. There are areas you can live in, but, it is expensive. And a lot of people come here hoping to raise money, and they struggle. So, but there's a lot of these good landing pads. So the government set up, and other people set up a lot of venture studios, accelerators. So, fairly controlled landing pads, and they help people with the visas and the accommodation and so on. But, it is a bit gold rushy. It is a bit like, being in Hollywood and you meet somebody, from Missouri who's come to be an actor, but they're actually waiting tables and hustling to get ahead. It is a bit like, Dubai particularly, there's a fair bit of turnover of people. So you do have to have the right anchor. You need a bit of capital behind you, and you need to be doing something of interest. The biggest success here is if you're doing something that's relevant to this region. If you're a startup and you're doing something and you're doing, an interesting AI startup, but it's mostly relevant in another place, and you come here, people think, well, you just came here to raise money because you couldn't raise it at home. If they won't invest in you at home, why would we invest? But if you're coming here with something that's, unique or interesting, or you're coming here with things that, help with, dry land farming or cooling technology or energy efficiency, or things that are really important in this region, new healthcare startups that, target people with different genetic makeup, then they'll welcome you and then the money's there. But if you come thinking it's an ATM, that doesn't work. And there are people who think that because of the.
We have 176 companies in GSD now. They're from 73 countries around the world. We have companies that are building immunotherapy vaccines, cancer, companies that have, one of them, Voxy, has 40 granted patents, 29 pending. They can tell if you have cancer from your breath. It came out of Boston Scientific. Those kind of companies, we're finding them. The one thing they have is, and I want to ask you a question about it. They're the best in class of what they do. So we look for that. We have a family office, mine. And so when we're finding those companies, the one thing, we've had people reach out to us from Riyadh, from Dubai, reach out, but and these are companies that have explosively grown, right? So they'll go from $0 to $10 million worth of revenue in a year and a half, right? They'll go from $0 to $52 million in 3 years. Bootstrap, that company's out of Poland. So we're finding those companies before other people, and we are in Silicon Valley in Palo Alto, right? So we have, but we don't limit ourselves. What's the appetite there? I mean, I don't see yet the bridge between that part of the world and truly with Silicon Valley yet. And I'm spending a lot of time at places like Stanford. I'm seeing the people, but I don't see the bridge yet. Right? You can feel.
And there's more of a bridge to Europe, and particularly to the UK, because traditionally there has been a connection here, and and there was a time when there was a big British colonial influence in this part of the world, and obviously a lot of people from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Africa, so those startups, they naturally come here. The US is further away, and there's less general connectivity. There's not as many Americans here. And so so that is an issue, and also but it is changing, but it's changing in very targeted areas. So you see a lot of US solar firms, people in the energy sector, you see them here, and there's a big push in Abu Dhabi now to build a big clinical trial industry, because there's people here and in the accessible population who have different, like sickle cell anemia, and there's different conditions that are present. There's a lot of diabetes here because of the introduction of a Western diet that wasn't here till recently, and things like that. So, so from a clinical trial point of view, you can get differentiated populations. So you're starting to see clinical trial, and the government's now, announced quite a lot of investment available because they want to build that industry here, and because the local healthcare industry is developed. Used to be that people here would go to Europe and sometimes America. If if you had cancer, you'd go to Sloan Kettering or something, or Texas A&M. But now, there have been partnerships. Cleveland Clinic has an amazing hospital here. Many other European. So people tend to get health treatment here. So that starts to foster research. And the universities are here. NYU's here. INSEAD's here. Sorbonne's here. So it's starting to change. But you're absolutely right. I was saying that you don't see, like, I go to a conference here that's, full of people from all around the world. If I was in a lot of places, like if I was in Europe or so on, half the people would be from the US. Here, that might be 5%. So it's still not a natural calling place for most Americans.
The really interesting thing, they're reaching out on the AI side.
Absolutely.
I have 29 years with AI, 40 years building companies in Silicon Valley personally, right? I'm getting people reaching out. So they started the grab at the context and talk to us, but finding those right people. And we do have companies from Dubai, by the way, inside of GSD. So we have started to cultivate some of those relationships. My grandmother, by the way, is Egyptian. She was actually born.
Wow.
So I remember growing up, she was speaking Arabic. So she spoke Arabic, French, English, and Greek, actually.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And so, yeah, but it's fascinating because, the one thing, I spoke at the United Nations twice, and one of the things I talked about is technology as a tool for peace, Michael. It's, how do we take and make this world a little bit better place? And it seems like some of the folks there that have reached out are really interested in it, right? How do we take our quality of life and change things? Because it's like I've been around the block of, in my 60s, I've been around the block a long time, and I've seen a lot of changes, but we better go down through and try to help each other. You're right about that. That's one of the things when you go to another areas, how to help each other. And it's fascinating because people are reaching out and they don't know, at least what I've seen, the folks from Saudi, for the most part, from Dubai, UAE a bit, they don't know how to find those startups, right? They're startups, and Silicon Valley's a hub to the rest of the world. So that's where companies come and go. But how do you get there? It's the same thing, right? It's not.
Yeah. What's the natural bridge? And there is a big focus on AI. So what happened here is in Abu Dhabi, there's a company that G42, a lot of backing from Sheikh Tarnoon, who's one of the top sheikhs here, and quite a very visionary sheikh too. Tarnoon is, and he invested a huge amount in AI. And he's the one that was recently in the news with Trump at the White House talking about, investing $1.5 trillion in the US, getting behind the data center, driven a lot by AI. And Microsoft made a multi-billion-dollar investment in the company he formed here
Yeah.
for AI. So the AI. There is the bridge, at a government level, at the Microsoft level. There's a big bridge, so that's starting to pull a lot more in. And what they're doing is what he's done is very deliberately is investing aggressively in the US, and the sovereign wealth funds here, are in a lot of the Silicon Valley companies. So one of the things we're hoping to do that will start to happen is we'll be able to help some of those companies who aren't pure startups, who've actually, the R&D, they've spun out of one of the universities, they've got real IP, they've got progress, they've got, venture funding there, but they want differentiated or strategic, or they want access to the market here, or they're looking for different applications and so on. And they're looking for big test beds, and there's big test beds here, and a lot of that's, I think, the opportunity. And then definitely, I would say, bioscience and AI and energy. Those are the three where there's a big market and a lot of capital available, and these are sophisticated markets. I mean, the energy industry here is very, very sophisticated. We, a phenomenal amount of, not so much wind because it's not very windy, a lot of solar. Abu Dhabi, we're mostly nuclear, but very advanced nuclear. So the energy sector here, and of course, massive exporter of oil and gas. Well, oil more than gas here, but yeah. So the energy sector is huge. Obviously things to do with dry land farming, managing heat. It gets pretty hot here. It's, a lot of the country is desert, so that's a big thing. But the AI, and again, one of the things about AI, of course, is you need a lot of computing power, and there's a lot of energy here, and it's relatively cheap.
That's interesting. It's we're doing things like multi-agent, multimodal large language models, where you're taking 14 and we've created teams, right, to solve problems. And in fact, my dog had stage 4 cancer, Michael, and I put that model on it, and it told me who could help me build a vaccine for my dog in less than 2 weeks.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. And the thing is, so and for myself, so I had stage 3 kidney disease, and I put it into the model. I had taken too many ibuprofens. And
really?
So what happened is I had stage 3 kidney disease, and it told me that there is a doctor in Thailand, in Bangkok, that does umbilical cord stem cells, and that if I do that treatment, there's a high likelihood that it's going to be able to cure that problem, which is incurable, right? So within, again, 2 weeks, I flew over to Bangkok. I had 50 million stem cells put in me. I got rid of stage 3 kidney. Not only that, actually, all the wrinkles went out of my face, and things changed. I was able to ride my bike 20 to 40 miles a day. It was crazy. And I've had it done twice since last October. So
wow.
There's these, and the thing is cancer, right? Cancer can be cured, but we have so much infobesity that it's having these tools to help us find that solution. It's in front of us, but there's so much data, we can't figure it out. And we're finding these tools to help figure it out, right? We're working with a former a neurosurgeon that graduated from Yale called MedMatch Network. Companies like that can profoundly impact their quality of life. And now with quantum, which is 100 million times faster, you put AI on top of quantum computers, you can do things what would take 10,000 years in 200 seconds. Real statistics from Google, by the way.
And my view is that I've been, like there's all these different waves of things come. With crypto, we've got AI. One of the things I've been sort of waiting for the last 20 years is our ability, to use nano level technologies, to use all these tools to diagnose. That idea that you actually, I'm not talking cyborg, but where you really do meld technology, where we really use software to personalize all medicine and the understanding and monitoring of people. Because I think extending people's life, but actually giving them more quality of life, is probably the biggest bang for the buck in terms of technology, not necessarily from a profit point of view, but from a societal point of view. And it's not just people like you and I who are, Western guys in their 60s, but what about all those people in their 30s who, didn't have proper nutrition growing up and have chronic conditions and are in, it's the ability to deliver mass health gains across the population.
Yeah.
I actually think that's the most exciting thing. And I like AI, I like robots, but I love a robot to go and do a job, but I'm much more interested in a robot exoskeleton that makes me able to lift something, or run faster or jump higher than I am actually in a robot doing it for me. You know what I mean? Like I want things that will enhance my life and make me a more productive, long-living, healthier, happier human. I don't want something that'll replace me. That's not the goal, you know.
Yeah,
And
no, the stem cell stuff, I was profoundly, there's only been about 7,000 people that have done the kind of stem cells that I've done, this full body stem cell replacement from umbilical cords. And there's only been about 700 that have ever done it twice. And, I put it into the model. I was profoundly, your brain processing power dramatically goes up. In my case, I'm a psychologist, I'd say 10 to 15%, it changes.
really,
And the wrinkles, I actually have before and after, 6 hours before and after, the wrinkles in my face gone, right? It was
yeah,
like it goes in and looks for the damaged areas, whether it's your heart, your liver, your kidneys. So Mel Gibson was on Joe Rogan talking about his dad who had stem cell replacement at like 91 or 92 and lived 101. And so these kind of things are out there, but why don't why don't we know about it? And
mm,
why don't we have ability, kind of like your grandmother that can say, hey, listen, Michael, this is what you should be doing today based on the data in your body, continuous sensing. These are some of the things you want to take a look at right now. It's like a concierge doctor on steroids, but it has empathy and compassion. We're building some of those kind of models in my company, right? These kind of
and I
things.
think that the part of the thing there too is, obviously there's a lot of regulatory, hurdles and so on. Part of the thing, and that's where, I think they're right here about wanting to build out more clinical trials, more testing using AI. If we can speed up the ability for us to test the safety of things so that governments feel comfortable to say everyone can have that, that's one of the biggest things where pure compute power, can help. It really, really can. And making people, aware for you to have gone to all the different doctors that were accessible to you and find the one that knew about that therapy in Bangkok and was comfortable to recommend it, and their malpractice insurance was okay, take forever. And but what you did was a hack because it was available. That we've got to get that out to everybody.
Well, we can
That's the
do
thing.
that with these models, these
Yeah.
multi-agent large language models. You don't hear people talking about that, but when you take 14 of them and create a team, when you take Perplexity, you take ChatGPT, you take all of them and you create a team, what they do is they actually start to help each other because they can, one will say to the other one, it's hallucinating. And it'll come
Yeah.
back and it'll actually start correct, just like you would do in a group conversation. Hey, listen, this isn't right. Check this. I mean, we do it. And so I've seen that. And then when you take multimodal, different senses, right? Being able to speak and see and those kind of things, you create the ultimate system. Then when you put empathy and compassion into the models, and I've written about 600 articles about this stuff. So if you put empathy and compassion into it over the years, you change
Mhm.
everything because it becomes like your grandmother. It loves you unconditionally. It cares about you, and when we built that, when it did it for my dog, so for all of you out there listening, you can actually see it. Sunny Cancer, you can see that, and put my name, Gary Fowler. You can see there's possibilities out there to be able to change our lives. The immunotherapy vaccines that are out there that'll allow us to defeat cancer because you know, um, cancer can be defeated with personalized medicine, but most people don't know about it.
No, and the people that do have to be extraordinarily wealthy and well provided. That thing about like you wonder why like the Queen and all her family lived to be 100, and like world leaders live so long. Well, it's be about the access to the resource and about being able to pay for people who are focused just on a few people, which is not sustainable. And that's what you're really talking about. Is that that artificial grandmother that cares about you but has this super set of knowledge, and you can make that cheaply available to everybody. That's the
Right,
difference.
exactly. That can be done because it's like the next level, my opinion. It's kind of like you're going to find these omni-channel engines. We're building them now, right? So I also own a development company on the other side. We're building those omni-channel engines that can find any. Think about this. So you're flying over to Dubai from San Francisco, right? Imagine it knows what seat you like on Delta Airlines on the right in first class or business. It knows when you land, you like to play pickleball or you're going to meet your friend for sushi. And it knows that you like California rolls at this restaurant. It books the appointment for you. It knows that you want to get a massage because your back hurts and you've got sciatica, right? It books that. It knows that you want to go out in the desert and ride a camel. It books it. It finds your people that want to go with you. And these kind of hyper personalized experiences, why doesn't it exist? It's amazing to me, actually. You think about it, just with travel, why do you have to go in currently and say, I want to book a ticket? And you got to book a ticket, then you got to book your hotel, then you got to book a car. Why wouldn't it be one place for everything that understands who you are? And those things are built, by the way. And we're actually doing a lot of work over in that part of the world with them, actually, with governments.
Very interesting.
And those kind of tools, because that omni-channel engine, Michael, you've been around a while too, like me. Those omni-channel engines are going to be able to power everything, because the same engine that I use for supply chain is the same engine I can use for travel. The same engine I use for medical, so I can find out as a doctor what service, or as a patient what service I need, or as a doctor to find out how to help me diagnose this patient, because I only got 10 minutes with them. They're going to happen. It's going to happen very, very quickly. I'm seeing it now, actually, because we have some of those. So that stuff is fascinating. And, for the audience out there, I know we're running a little bit late today, and I really appreciate it. But so for those investors that are out there, for those startups that are out there, what are some closing thoughts, some advice you can give them? And tell us a little bit about how they could contact you.
Yeah, well, so I'm at the Entrepreneurs Group. So you can come to our website, or you can I'm on LinkedIn. Look up Michael Gale on LinkedIn, or the Entrepreneurs Group. I think look, I always think that the sort of noise to signal ratio in technology and startups and venture capital is very, very high. So right now, a lot of noise to signal problem in AI. Going back to the way I started, look for the customers, and you can't be one of the big ships. You're not going to compete with all these big companies. So you've got to differentiate yourself as an investor, as an entrepreneur, as a government entity. Look for the things that add value. All these examples you're talking about are examples where you add value to human life. And in the end, all tech, all investing is about, are you taking the cost out, or are you enhancing the experience? Are you creating a new product? And, don't be investing because it's AI. That's meaningless. Don't be investing because it was an internet company once, or a telephone company, or anything else. Be investing because it's improving people's quality of life, or saving the pets they care about, or getting them a better experience when they travel, or it's all be use case driven and think about who's going to pay for that. And I actually think we overcomplicate a lot of things, and we have very sophisticated financial models, and we do a lot of analysis. If you look at the venture capital industry, we do massive analysis on all these things. But actually, a lot of the time is, if you sit with people and you say, hang on, why would someone pay for this? If somebody's got 100 apps on their phone and they've told to only keep 10, why would they keep yours? Right? And if you can answer that question about how you're truly relevant all the time, not when people are bored or they've got extra time, or they're young and they're just learning, or busy people with busy, complex lives and a lot of demands. Why will you be something they use every day, or when they're in a crisis, why will they turn to you? Do you add fundamental value? Then everything else follows, because if you're solving an unmet need, and it doesn't have to be an unmet need that people know about, but if you're solving an unmet need that could be a new unmet need, then all the rest is money, mechanics, selling. You've got to have a good team. There's so many other things you've got to get right. But if you're not meeting an unmet need, why are you doing it? And a lot of people are doing it because it's cool, or it's interesting, or they see it's a better way to do this. There's a lot of things where doing it better doesn't add any value. You know what I mean? Whereas there are some things where doing it better adds a huge amount of value. So that would be my.
People don't want to pay for it, right? If you're not, the key is, right. Bob Dorff and Steve Blank say, are they willing to grab it out of your hands, to use it? And so what's the best way for them to get a hold of you? LinkedIn or?
Yeah, LinkedIn. If you message me on LinkedIn, that's probably the easiest way. Yeah.
Sounds great. Well, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule, Michael, for joining us today.
Anytime, Gary, anytime. It's lovely always to talk to you.
And to all my audience out there, please, at the bottom of the video, you'll see like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And we'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studio Presents. Thanks, Michael, and thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Gary.